Okay.
I'm white, and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive for any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. If I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do the show live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific right here on twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. You can check out our new swag store at eplex.shop. Just to make things more confusing for Matt when he reads out the tech show. Anyway, I'm producer Dave. You can find me on Grindr. Uh-oh. I don't have you. I don't have sound from you. You don't even have to try unplugging it and plugging it back in. You just have to try plugging it in.
Yep. There we go. I am HK Perrin. You can find me right here every Wednesday for the Intellectual Dollar Tree. And you can find me on Twitter at HK Perrin. And you can also find me every Wednesday on YouTube at our new show, How the Tech Are You?
Fantastic. Did that post today?
Yes.
Cool. Well, I'm slacking.
Like half an hour ago.
Oh, you're slacking too. Yeah, there was no way I was going to get the audio version up then. So, I don't know. I guess we're just going to jump right into it. I didn't know what we were going to watch, and then I figured out what we were going to watch. This is an oddball thing that we're going to watch here because a lot of things I could say about Mr. Andy No-Go here, and I'll probably leave them up to everyone's imagination. James Lindsay was running around saying that everybody LGBTQ open about it or willing to talk about it was a groomer. So here he is with a gay guy, Andy No, who's just going to agree with him about that, apparently. We're going to talk about James Lindsay's Twitter suspension and, I don't know, all kinds of other stuff that might actually get us a little no-no from Twitch. We'll see how it goes here.
Hi, James. Thanks so much for making time with me.
Also, he's never lived. He's not from the UK. Just keep that in mind as he speaks.
This interview and this opportunity to talk because
who Andy No?
Yeah, not from the UK.
Actually, a number of years.
Okay.
It's weird for me to think that back in my early days of journalism, you were one of the first people I met, one of the first I interviewed back in Portland, Oregon in 2017 or 2018 that
that accent he's putting on is actually a Portland accent.
Scandal story came out.
There was an 18, yeah. It's been a while.
Yeah, I remember you, Helen, Peter Boghossian interviewed you in a room
Oh, in a room, you say?
There's
Wow,
laws,
fucking riveting.
And those were the days. A lot has changed in this movement. I guess at that time, that was kind of pre-IDW, early IDW. I mean, that whole entire thing's fault.
Oh, how mad are both of these people that they didn't get to take that picture in front of that fucking plant? Right? Like, how mad are they?
Are they still mad about that?
They probably stay mad.
Yeah.
But, you know, your profile has grown significantly. People, you know, are obviously familiar with your works on explaining critical race theory. I think you are probably one of the very few
No,
people on
not
the platform.
explaining critical race theory. Redefining critical race theory.
Making
He has
things...
admitted that he was redefining critical race theory.
That was Chris Rufo, dude.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, that was the one who was just out and proud about how if we call any racial... If we tar and feather the idea of critical race theory, and then we call any movement or any sort of push towards diversity and inclusion critical race theory, then that's what we're going to do. He like tweeted it out. It's a different guy. We can watch Chris Rufo talk
That's
to Jordy
right.
Pete during the post game if you want.
Yeah. But James Lindsay also has not ever actually explained in a real way critical race theory.
Well, not for nothing. I mean, his degree is in math, and critical race theory is like an esoteric theory of law that not a lot of people in law school even study. So,
Yeah.
The United States who helped mainstream and distill a lot of these really complicated far left academic theories for a wider audience to be able to better understand. So and now you started for a while now new discourses, and anyways, I've been a fan of your work for a long time. A lot of the people watching this will be fans as well. And unfortunately, very recently, you were permanently suspended from Twitter. And I wanted to talk to you about that. You were very unapologetic in using OK Groomer, using the term groomer to refer to people who were ideologically grooming children and
or just anybody who happened to be gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender who had the fucking balls to talk back to James Lindsay.
Yeah, so if you just say I'm gay, is that grooming children?
It just depends on whether or not you're Dave Rubin, I think,
Okay.
because they wouldn't accuse him of that.
Are you sure?
I mean, maybe, I don't know. Maybe they'll throw him under the big gay bus at one day too. Who knows?
Yeah.
into a certain political ideology. Were you the one who actually coined like that in this particular context?
So I want to be as fair and honest as possible. I have
No, you don't.
informed with evidence provided that it had been used by other people before I started doing it, but I thought that
Yeah, but people were using it in like a context like where there are certain streamers who shall remain nameless who had members of their community who were there before the member of the community was 18 and then started dating that person like shortly after they became 18. And people were like, okay, groomer, you know, like, because that's, and still that's like, maybe that happened. Maybe it didn't, maybe it was fair, maybe it wasn't, but that was sort of the context in which I had seen it previously, was where it looked like that might be the case. Like where where somebody was trying to get somebody else for themselves. Right.
Yeah. If there's no romantic relationship involved or no attempted romantic relationship, then there's no grooming.
Well, romantic might be a charitable word.
Yeah. TOS and all that.
Yeah. Okay.
on it. I did not know other people were doing it, and I started doing it on Twitter, and I probably am the person who popularized it. Radical feminists apparently had been doing it in their forums and sometimes in public-facing accounts to go after trans activists as well for a period of time before that. But so
that's
I
not
can't
good.
claim that I was the first person to ever do it, but I think I can claim credibly that I was the one who popularized it and kind of drove it into the mainstream.
So in that very long introduction I just did.
I wasn't the person who started the disease, but I sneezed on the most people once I got it.
Right. I didn't invent typhoid. I was just the Mary.
Topics. You've written a book on critical race theory. So you've done a hell of a lot in just a few years. But I'm trying to map out like how you got from, because when I knew you actually in 2017, 18, 19, you were so unapologetically left-wing and so anti-Trump. And now I think a significant portion of your supporters that I see online are conservative, Christian, Trump supporters. How did these two worlds and your previous views, I don't know if you still hold on to those views actually, like how do you get from there to here is what I'm asking.
Well, if I might paraphrase the great Thomas Sowell, facts. As it turns out, the left has been going, as you know as well as anybody, or better in some ways than most people, the left has gone off the cliff. I don't know that I am technically conservative. I get identified that way a lot now. My views, however,
you get
of
called
the
far
left
right.
and of what enables the left. Oh, I know. I got told the Human Rights Campaign put out a thing recently saying that I use alt-right terminology like cultural Marxism, which is just a term that's been used for over 100 years. So how it's alt-right terminology now.
That's not what HRC's I mean, they may have mentioned that in what they had written about Lindsay, but they're not talking the Human Rights Campaign. Remember them equal signs that were going around on everybody's car, like before gay marriage? They were like on every car in the fucking Bay Area.
Yeah, it was like the yellow equal signs on like a purple background, I think it was.
Yeah, that's a LGBTQ rights organization or whatever. They are definitely, they brought him up or were talking about him because of this trans and like queer moral panic that he's participating in. They may have also brought up some of the other stuff he's doing, saying that it aligns with other far right ideologies, but he's like burying the lead. And I don't even know what they wrote about him, but I know that because of the focus of the organization, that it was this stuff,
Yeah.
Mystery to me. But anyway, watching through 2019 and 2020, when in a sense woke stopped being fun and just this stupid but dangerous thing that was happening primarily in academia and kind of in some of these, circles in journalism, and it turning into something that had gripped the culture completely, and then studying its antecedents and its kind of trajectory into the public led me to completely reject that and completely reject everything that enables it. And so it's funny you bring up that a lot of my followers and friends and supporters are Trump supporters. I frequently remind them that I think I'm more MAGA than they are.
What?
I am not in the sense of being all that enamored with Trump personally one way or another, but in the idea of a make America great again, to renew America back to a constitutional republic as opposed to something that's undergoing a communist.
I mean, this is like overdone, but I just wonder, like, when they say make America great again, like you just go, well, when was that?
Yeah.
And why? When and why?
And almost invariably the answer is the 50s.
Yep. Before women could have credit cards and shit.
And then it's like, well, were you alive in the 50s? No? Then do you know what it's like then?
Right. It's a pining away for a past that probably never existed.
Mm-hmm.
Revolution. I'm probably more committed to that cause than the majority of my conservative supporters are. So maybe that's why they call me far right. I don't know.
That's not what
my
MAGA
views are still
is,
fairly
though.
Moderate.
Well, it's one of those things that just like it means whatever it needs to mean to someone whenever it needs to mean it, right? It's a platitude.
Sure, but I do think that for the most part, MAGA started as and is, to me, like one of the defining features of MAGA is hardline stances on immigration. Like you are against essentially brown people immigrating to the United States.
That's interesting because one of the first, like before Trump, Ronald Reagan was saying "Make America Great Again," and Ronald Reagan's administration granted a pretty broad amnesty to undocumented folks, you know?
But the modern, like the Donald Trump started MAGA movement, is all about making America a whiter country.
Right, but to somebody who
That's
doesn't
their idea of greatness is whiteness.
right, but to somebody who doesn't care about immigration, or is maybe a second generation person from Honduras who's in that, maybe they think America was great before gay marriage or before, I don't know, women's suffrage, or you know what I'm saying? So it's like I said, it's completely meaningless, and it allows the person who hears it to like sort of project their own ideological ideas onto it.
Yes, it's nebulous, but I would say that the vast majority of people who identify as MAGA are white, and to a certain extent would agree with white nationalist views.
Sure, because they're white nationalists and they're projecting what they believe onto the phrase "Make America Great Again." That's why the phrase. Why the phrase was able to bring in people who might not agree on issues, but are just like have certain bigotries and biases. It's because it doesn't actually say anything.
Yeah, but if we're going to define it like James Lindsay is trying to do, then I think his definition is a very poor one.
That's what I'm saying, is that it isn't for you, it's for James Lindsay, and he can project onto it what he wants.
All right, yeah. That's a good point. To him, it's something completely different.
The inclusion of what boils down to communism in a new form in the United States, which I feel unambiguously has no place here, and I want to see it completely removed, except as a matter of private belief that people are entitled to have under the Constitution.
But under the Constitution, we're also allowed to organize and vote and redress the government for our grievances. So he's just wrong there about like your rights to be a communist. In America, you have the right to be a communist and you have the right to organize. It's just wrong.
Does he mean communists or communism? Because as far as I know, no part of America is communist. Am I incorrect?
Like I said, he's just wrong. I don't want to get into the weeds about every little thing here.
Okay, so either way you interpret it, he's still wrong.
Well, he's just, if I have the right to personally believe that under the Constitution, we also have the right to organize under those principles.
Yeah.
So explain what you mean when you're talking about communist revolution, because I'm in the space of researching and writing about communist ideologues, militants, and particularly the anarchist communist manifestation in Antifa. And I see a lot of times with Republican politicians at their political events, they will throw around these terms like Marxist, socialist, Democrats, communists, and kind of use it as if they were all synonyms. I know they're doing it for political reasons, political partisan reasons. I think it's inaccurate, but describing what's happening now on the mainstream left as a communist revolution is pretty strong. Can you clarify? And because when I think of communist revolution, let's say my family background of parents who lived through a communist revolution in the form of a collapse of an entire regime of South Vietnam, the dissolution of their country, and the literal imprisonment, prison camps of anybody who's affiliated with the former government. That was the reason for the huge diaspora and refugee crisis out of Vietnam after the end of the Vietnam War in 1975. So I think of it kind of more in that terms. And it sounds hyperbolic when you're describing America now as in the midst of communist revolution, but I don't want to misstate your words, or maybe I'm not understanding.
No, I mean, I would understand why you would see it as hyperbolic, but I see that that's because the conditions under regimes like we saw arise in Vietnam or in Korea before that, or in China before that, or in, the Eastern Bloc before that, or in Russia before that. So these kinds of models of communist revolutions, those were very 20th century in terms of their technology and implementation. We're not in the 20th century anymore. China has spent the last 20, 25 years developing and enabling and implementing a social credit system. They've spent the last, several decades developing.
Yeah, but here we just have a capitalist credit system. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like there are a ton of things that you can do to hurt your credit that have absolutely nothing to do with whether you can pay back a loan.
Right. And I don't know, I guess like systems are always like, once a system becomes sufficiently complex, something like that is probably bound to arise. I don't know for sure, like, because it's like, I don't have like a bunch of models that we can run on it or whatever, but it seems like if a system becomes complex enough, something like that's going to arise anyway. Just that here in America, you're dealing with Experian or whoever. And, not for nothing, they've had some major problems. And if you've ever tried to get something off your credit score that wasn't true, or, maybe you were the victim of fraud, you might wish you were dealing with the DMV after a couple weeks of trying to deal with it. Like,
yeah.
So like, it's not unique to China. It's just that they've implemented it on a state level. I don't think either are fucking all that great. I'm not sure which I prefer.
Mass surveillance system. So if we were to dip into the fancy terminology of the postmodernists, what Michel Foucault called the carceral continuum, they're on a very kind of high-tech surveillance-based, exclusion-based through social credit means of carceral behavior. They don't have to take people and lock them up in prisons at gunpoint or re-educate them in gulags any longer. They can do so through what they're using for the re-education is nudge theory to the general public through social media.
Oh no, it's not through social media. Like, this nudge theory is like a really old theory. He's complaining now about a PSA essentially. You're like listening to the radio and you hear a PSA. It's like, don't litter, keep our water clean, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That stuff comes out of it's nudge theory. It's where if you can nudge people in a direction, you might be able to make some societal improvements by like being like, hey, litter's bad, throw your trash away. He's talking about that right now. Remember, give a hoot, don't pollute?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an example of what he's talking about. It's like a little catchy song, usually for kids, but they'd be singing it around their parents and shit,
Yeah.
And that's like, I don't know, if it's nudging you in the direction of give a hoot, don't pollute, it seems like one of the better things the government can do. One of the better things a powerful institution can do.
If they're doing it right, whereas a system like DARE was the exact opposite of what we should have done.
Right. It probably just made people want to do drugs.
Yeah.
They're like, this one does what? I can stay up all night? I'm 14. Fuck yeah.
Well, like, they wouldn't even tell you what the drugs do. They would just lie to you about the drugs. They would just say, like, all drugs, like you try any drug and your life is going to be ruined. And then you try weed and you're like, this is actually pretty good. I like this. And I feel a lot better the day after smoking weed than I do the day after having like a few drinks. So like, what else did DARE tell me that's completely wrong?
All right, we're off. We're off. We're like off to the side a little bit here. Let's try to bring it back.
Media propaganda, which is what we call the left media. They can do so with children through educational devices like social and emotional learning that present them with social and emotional conflict and then give them correct resolution to that in line with doctrine, which is a form of programming that models or mirrors, I should say, what Mao was doing in his prisons for his re-education prisons.
What the fuck?
So we're seeing it in a new 21st century context enabled by these little black mirrors that we carry around in our pockets that create a different set of...
Oh, no, he didn't just call your... Come on, dude. Get the fuck out of here. Oh, I've watched Black Mirror. I know a cultural thing. Get the fuck out of here. Imagine like these two guys go out. I assume James Lindsay is straight and Andy Ngo is gay. Imagine them going out trying to like get a date. Like imagine them like as wingmen, like in like a buddy comedy, except it would be a tragedy. I just couldn't imagine two less charismatic people if I tried.
Also, like, is he saying that phones are making people communist?
Well, he's saying that they're, I don't know if he's saying that. He's saying that they're what's the media you're consuming is going to like push you in a certain direction, but like that's been the case for media always. Silent films had that ability. The newspaper had that ability. Like old like fables, stories that elders would tell to younger members of the society before we had these kinds of ways of communicating had that impact on people. You know what I'm saying? This is it's just accelerated by information technology as is everything else.
I would say though, information technology makes it a lot more complex because essentially you have like an algorithm dictating changes to society, and that algorithm is probably not considering anything about like ethical behavior. You know, that algorithm is only considering what's going to make people look at my app the longest. And usually that's content that makes you angry.
Sure, I guess, but it's just faster. Like if you know, I don't, again, that's like so far down a different rabbit hole. What he's saying is that like the ability to transmit information is going to impact society, and it's just that the phone or even a fucking computer versus before everybody had a computer, the computers all got connected, right? A BBS could get you information quicker than a newspaper could.
Yeah. I don't think it's the information though that, like, I'm not talking about what he's saying, but I don't think it's the information.
I'd like it if
that,
we would be talking about what the people on the show are saying, if that's okay.
Okay, but you know, accessing any information is different than accessing specific information.
Constraints and means for population control. But I don't think that it's ideologically that much different. Of course, by definition, Marxism being a critical dialectical philosophy has to destroy itself and reinvent itself with each new generation. So you see Marxism as a classical form going into vanguard Marxism with Lenin, going into cultural Marxism, going into critical Marxism, going into this kind of utopian woke Marxism that they have now starting about 20 years ago, now shifting into this new
utopian woke Marxism
goals or the sustainable development goals of the United Nations.
What is that?
ESG component.
Yeah, this is dumb. What he's saying here is that times change and that people's sensibilities and the things they care about change with over generations. And it's not like we're not going to, you know, cut it off right at where you decide the generation is. But yeah, the fucking sensibilities of people who are like going to generally be progressive or more liberal are different now than they were 50 years ago.
Yeah, like is like telling people, hey, you shouldn't say the FA word. Like, is that communism now?
Who? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe. I mean, OK Groomer is just another version of that in the end, right?
Yeah.
They're creating a social credit system to control the way that corporations behave and to control the way that institutions have to behave, and thus use those as instruments to nudge, if you will, or to start to contour the way that people are going to live. We don't need a breadline, for example, if we have a social credit system that says you can't buy XYZ until your social credit score is high enough. So
you mean like a credit score? Like if you make,
but also like we don't have a social credit system in the United States.
Right, but so the credit, let's say you make enough money that you could pay a mortgage, right? If your credit's shot for this reason or that, now they're not going to fucking sell you a mortgage. And so now you're stuck renting, and it would be interesting because they'd probably say you could afford a higher rent than that mortgage would be. So he's like describing a thing that we have. We're just the word social isn't on it, but it decides what you can buy at your income level. Once the thing that you're going to buy is beyond your means of like reasonably being able to save up and buy it, like a house.
Yeah. I should say it is actually what we have kind of as a social credit system, because there are aspects, there are social aspects that play into your credit score.
Right, like I said, it's in like a lot of ways, it's the same thing. It's just called something else. There's just one less word.
Yeah, but there are also things that he would probably be okay with.
Well, yeah, he seems to be like a pretty cheerful capitalist, right?
Yeah.
They can force you to participate in different ways than at the barrel of a gun in this kind of new program. And I think that that's what we've been unambiguously going through. And just for the unambiguous part, since George Floyd died and they took to the streets in 2020, is that the Cultural Revolution had come to America. And I'm proud to have actually warned people who worked for the Pentagon in February of 2020 that this was coming about 3 months in
Dear Pentagon.
advance. I'm sad to say that they didn't.
This guy's an idiot. The Pentagon doesn't, like, constitutionally does not do anything, like, doesn't police. The military does not do police work.
Correct.
So he, like, the Pentagon, okay, so you wrote an email to the Pentagon. It's like culturalrevolution@pentagon.gov. I mean, I don't know, who do you email? Like, who did he contact? My friend's dad worked at the Pentagon. I told him about the Cultural Revolution, and he said, okay. I mean, like, what the fuck?
Listen to me. But I do believe that we are going through a cultural revolution. It is a soft, almost velvet style revolution, or a color revolution, as it were, as opposed to a kind of overt militaristic coup like you would have seen with the Bolsheviks or with the communists in China taking over for the Kuomintang or whatever. So when I say that we're going through a communist revolution, I mean that quite literally, but communism itself has evolved from the crude communism or cruder Soviet-style communism into this new hybrid model that's been pioneered in China since we opened up the market there. And so they have a communist structure with a market operating inside of it, and at its pleasure. And that model is being, I think, brought more global now.
Is it still communism without the economic framework of...
Oh shit, Andy No accidentally asked this guy a difficult question.
Is it still communism if there's no communism in it?
Like, I guess, communist theory and ideology.
So this is an interesting question, and I'm glad you asked it. Communism actually precedes Marx. The economic communism that Marx was kind of looking at was something that was already well developed. It mostly was viewed as a small-scale solution. We have actually a commune here in Tennessee, rather famously. It's called The Farm, that's been in operation for over 100 years. It's not exactly a resort of high health and prosperity, but it's been ongoing for 200 or some odd people for generations now. But in the broader context, when you look at Marxism, I have stepped away from kind of the classical interpretation of Marxism and the academic understanding of Marxism, that Marxism is primarily offering an economic theory. I think that Marx actually laid down a theology, that he organized a religion, and that material conditions were the driving center of what he thought made for man's sense of being and purpose in life.
I reject your reality and insert my own. Except he literally means that.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody said to me, what is communism? And they didn't really know what it was, my first thing would be like, well, at the very base level, it's just a structural critique of capitalism and how capitalism fucks the workers. And yeah, you can get more into it, but that's like, you get too far, you get too much into it, and I'm just out of my depth, right? Like, I'm not an expert on these things. This guy has a math degree and is just making up communism as he goes along to criticize mostly people who were dunking on him on Twitter before he got kicked off on Twitter for calling everybody a groomer. I don't know. I mean, I'm having a tough time with this.
And so he built a religion, and the kind of operating system that he plugged into it was economic conditions. So an economic theory got built into a religion that was an underlying theology, and that I think is something like kind of like it sounds a little silly.
I
but like
disagree.
a PlayStation isn't any of the games that it plays. It has the capacity to change the game out. So Marxism would be like, or the PlayStation, and then what we call classical Marxism would be a particular game, but then you can take that disc out and put a different disc in, and when you put the new disc in,
But what if you have a disc for a GameCube?
That's capitalism.
Oh, yeah, because you have to go buy another computer to run it. That's right. That is capitalism. Good job.
I know this is old. They don't use discs
Well, like,
anymore. But
none of this makes any sense.
like, I don't know, cultural conditions, or like
Communism isn't
kind of
some
collective
framework
term
that
of
you can
society
plug in like
that's-
different things into. Communism is about economics.
Right. And like I said, I'm not an expert on this, but this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, I don't have to be an expert on something to know when someone else is also not an expert on something. You don't have to know the answer to know what bullshit sounds like. Somebody's like, what's the square root of 109? Well, you're like, well, I can't do that in my head. They're like, it's 114. You're like, nope, that's wrong. It's bigger. That you can't do that. That can't be right.
critical Marxism, or some identity politics like critical race theory or queer
I don't
theory.
know the exact right answer, but I know the answer you just
You have
gave
the
is
same- You have
bullshit.
the same engine. You have the same PlayStation running the game. It's just operating a different, playing a different piece of software. So I see Marxism. that way.
Communism
I see all
is
these
like a
on the-
PlayStation. You put a disc into it and you can play a different game.
And if you play Leisure Suit Larry on your PlayStation, it's like the communism is like redistributing booty.
And then if you try and shove Mario 64 in there, you're going to break your communism. And then you have to go to the store and buy a new communism.
Which is fun. We shouldn't just redistribute the communisms. You have to actually go buy it.
And this has been, the bulk of my work.
That's why Raytheon puts a rainbow logo on their missile during Pride Month.
Critical theory, whether it's cultural Marxism, whether it's postmodernism, even.
Ooh, cultural Marxism is a fucking anti-Semitic dog whistle. That's all.
Which is a change from when I wrote Cynical Theories, whether it's this woke stuff, the identity politics, critical race theory, queer theory, post-colonial, all of the different fat studies, all these things.
He's
I
just
see them on
listing the
exact
kinds
same
of people who
continuum.
dunked on him on Twitter.
And it's the exact same,
Like sociologists,
with a
historians.
different, if you switch metaphors to a car, it's the exact same engine with a different body style, in essence. So yeah, I still think this is...
No, I like the
We could- if
PlayStation
you
metaphor.
need to-
Because,
we need to nitpick
every
the
once in a while, I'd hit the button to open my communism, and then I'd try and close the communism again, but it wouldn't close, and I'd have to tap on the button a few times before I could finally close the communism again.
It's your
Perfect metaphor.
your breadline latch was fucked up.
Yeah.
Think of the latch as like a gulag that holds.
I think it's because I spilled soda into it once, and that made it all gunked up. Communism, if you spill soda into communism, it gets all gunked up.
Right. That's why you need to have crappy potato vodka.
Yes, much better.
Neo-communism, because it's introduced the idea of a market to solve the production problem, and it's introducing the idea of technology to solve the distribution problem. But it's ultimately still the same goal, that all the people have to be on the same page, that as they say it in this one book called The Politics of Education, that the I think is fulfilled in the we think. And so it's still a collectivist redistribution.
No joke though, I have a PlayStation that only works when it's upside down, and that makes sense because communism only works when it's upside down.
In fact, communism in and of itself is upside down.
There you go.
to where we're supposed to generate a ultimately classless and stateless society in the long end of time, with an administered state, I should say, in between, because that's what socialism represents for Marx.
Did Andy fall asleep with his eyes open while James was talking?
What about for the Democrats and liberals who are on board with
Bad follow-up. My follow-up would be, can you explain that again, except make sense this time?
sort of in the form of they support or help lead or amplify these cancel campaigns, or trying to implement policies wherever to restrict freedom of expression. When you look at these particular liberals, they're not communists. I'm thinking there are a lot of liberals, let's say in Western Europe, who are supportive of restrictions on speech that they think is hateful. And a lot of many American Democrats wish they could emulate that type of legislation in the U.S. were it not for the First Amendment. Do you find those type of people fitting into?
There are already restrictions to the First Amendment, though.
Right. Like I can't use my words to hire a hitman.
Yeah. Or you can't incite violence.
Right. Yeah, you can't like we have like conspiracy laws. Those if you were a free speech absolutist, you would be against laws that are like RICO and stuff, like racketeering and stuff, because that's a lot about what people say to one another.
Yeah. Or like you can't lie to Congress.
Correct. You can't lie. You can't lie to the police, but they can lie to you.
Can you not lie to the police?
What's the relationship, would you say, with these
I mean, I do.
neo-communists?
I don't know that
Martha Stewart got busted for.
I don't think they know that they're communists. Now, before I get into that, I want to remind
I don't think they know that they're communists, but I'm going to decide for them.
Famous character kind of in this progression is this woman, Angela Davis, very radical, left-wing black activist, black feminist. And she's still active today in the prison abolition and police abolition movement and in education. So she's still alive, she's still active, she's still revered and cited by the far left and by even kind of the mainstream left now, these Democrats, some of them you mentioned, as like she's some kind of hero. And she was the vice presidential candidate for the Communist Party USA a few times, at least twice. I don't remember if it was more than twice in the 1970s. And she eventually,
boy, she came close to winning too.
Left the Communist Party because she said that it was too right-wing. So when we start talking about communism again, as we come out into from 20th century into 21st century, there's been kind of a sea change in how they think. But as far as these kind of people who you would identify as say that they want to have hate speech campaign or prohibitions and so on. But they certainly, if you ask them, or do you identify as communist, do you subscribe to communist policies or ideas, they would say no. They probably have some socialist ideas in terms of, maybe, socialist medicine or government medicine or even government education.
Socialist medicine.
But they don't view themselves anywhere on the communist spectrum. But what I would say is that what we're doing is, we're just misunderstanding what Karl Marx actually did, which was that he built a theology. And if you build a theology, then you have...
I wonder if you would call the highways socialist roads.
You have lots.
Yeah, it seems like... Oh, no, he probably has a nice car, right? He's got bucks.
I wonder if he would call the safety standards for those cars socialist safety standards.
No, because his car probably is very safe. He strikes me as like a late model S-Class Mercedes kind of guy who would remind someone on a date that he had a late model S-Class Mercedes.
Lots of people.
They'd be like, well, that's something about you.
It'll come out of it through different interpretations of the underlying central scripture. But then you'll also have lots of people who definitely would either identify, say, as Christian, but they don't really, that maybe they've never read their Bible. They don't have the slightest idea what's in it. They know a few Bible verses maybe that they heard at church, but they certainly are not theologically
Most
savvy.
people who identify as Christian have never read the Bible.
I don't know. They're not even really theologically aware. They think it's what it means to be a good person. And you have other people who would buy into a lot of these kind of things without necessarily even calling themselves Christian. Especially there in Western Europe, you'll run into that quite a lot. But that they're still operating within a broadly Christian framework, or that they identify as Christian without knowing the first thing about what Christianity is really about, except for maybe the one first thing, about Christ, doesn't change the fact that they're still operating within that underlying theological structure, that their worldview is still organized in terms of that, and that they might still be, upholding a system that is in essence built out of that and perpetuating that. So I think these Democrats that don't realize that they're playing a part of communism and wouldn't identify that way have subscribed to enough of the theology to be moving the goals of the communists, but just like the communists.
I think he's got that backwards.
Party.
He's saying that people who call themselves Christian are Christian because they agree with one part of the Bible, and yet people who don't call themselves communist are communist because they don't believe in any part of communism. I'm very confused what he means.
That's because he has, I don't think he knows what he's talking about. He's got like a few names of a few people he claims are postmodernist scholars, and that's fine, whatever. I can't rattle off the names of any postmodernist scholars, but like that's just all he does. He keeps naming the same few names and then just saying that basically anything that isn't what he believes to be like traditional, what he would call Western values, that's just all communism now. Like it works for the audience that he's cultivated, because they don't care either. They just want to suggest that people who disagree with them are bad, and they can just use communism as a stand-in for bad. And they'll be like, see, this genius, whatever, is saying that these people are bad. It's not as deep as he would have you believe, I don't think.
Party used to laugh. They had things they called sucker lists, which were influential people, usually progressive religious people, who they could trick into doing communist agenda items or holding or promoting beliefs useful to achieving a communist agenda item without actually identifying themselves as communist at all, and even sometimes identifying themselves as against it. And they call them also useful idiots, which is a term that most people have heard, and they laughed about it. And so I think that these people may not identify as or realize that they are participating in a broad communist revolution, but they're intricately necessary components to achieving exactly that revolution. Communism has always been and always will be something very, very few people actually support and understand at the same time. But it requires getting a lot of people to take up policy points and things on its behalf in order to get them passed in the initial stages.
So is communism now policy that James doesn't agree with?
I feel like you could say the same thing as what he just said about laissez-faire capitalism. Like, very few people agree with laissez-faire capitalism, and very few people know what it is.
Right, but it requires policy for it to be enacted.
Yeah.
Until that final clamp of power comes down. And so I see them within that framework. People say that it's not fair for me to say that, but I think it's just a blunt fact. And it's very dangerous. I hope that they can be awakened to what they're contributing to. Hate speech laws are a communist agenda item. They serve nobody's freedom.
Where does Antifa's anarchist communist ideology fit into this cultural revolution, in your opinion?
I mean, they have. Historically speaking, and because of your book as well as anybody, this is a little bit complicated, but they are in some sense a kind of on the ground shock troop, but they are also wild and anarchist, right? So they have a different model. I don't think that the Antifa is going to be particularly happy with corporations like BlackRock and Vanguard becoming the de facto rulers of the world, and so they are. Again, I think Yuri Bezmenov called people like them political prostitutes and said to basically put no energy into them. They just do what they need to get done for you, and then you make use of them. And let's pray for Antifa that they don't get their way, because they're going to get shot. They're going to get locked up. Every one of those criminals is going to be completely worthless to the new regime once the new regime's in place. So the role that they play is there. Now, philosophically, they're not ambiguous. Antifa write in their own book, their own books, that they, take their inspiration from characters like Franz Fanon, who had strong Marxist influence.
You fucking find an anti-fascist activist and you tell them that name and they'll be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Where are the Proud Boys at?
Algerian post-colonialist in the 50s and 60s. He wrote The Wretched of the Earth in 1962. He advocated violence to throw off colonization and to regain your sense of self. They openly...
Well, yeah, I feel comfortable advocating violence to resist colonization by another like culture. I feel like Americans, if, for example, Canada were to just try to start colonizing America, I feel like I don't know, maybe I'd advocate violence to get them to stop. I don't know, I don't know at this point though. I mean, I don't know, might not be the worst thing that could ever happen, but he's like, oh, he advocated violence against colonizers. It's like, well, yeah, colonization is just another form of invasion, dude.
I am on the side of Ukraine. I wonder what side James Lindsay is on.
Embrace him. They openly embrace Herbert Marcuse. They openly embrace the idea of either a Che Guevara style or a Maoist style cultural revolution. Although
I don't think I have to wonder. He's probably on Russia's side.
And so they are a absolutely crucial paramilitary entity that is strategic enough not to organize, at which point it would have to be cracked down upon beyond kind of networking and undergrounding and kind of a syndicate kind of style. But they are an integral part of making this thing happen. They're not quite the Red Guard. They're more like if we just cut the anti-crap out, which is a lie that they're actually fascist. They're more like Mussolini's black shirts than they are like anybody else.
Brown shirts, dude.
How do they dress? I mean, come on. But they just like.
Hey guys, could you stop being fascist? No, you're the fascist.
This is a ridiculous. First of all, the brown shirts, dude. He said, oh, they're like the black shirts. He doesn't even know what the fuck he's talking about. Like, I can't even, like, this guy, like, has such a, I'm not buying that he has, like, deep knowledge of these sort of philosophers who most people don't know about when he gets, like, just basic facts about well-known historical events, like, wrong. Do you know what I'm saying?
Testimony in 1953 to the House Un-American Activities Committee, or House Committee on Un-American Activities, we'll say it correctly, and she testified as a disaffecting
Time for Tinfoil says Mussolini had the black shirts, Hitler had the brown shirts.
And she said explicitly, they take on nice-sounding names for themselves, like anti-fascist. And then,
so did he say Mussolini?
The only people who are truly against fascism.
I'm not going back to
everybody
check.
who opposes them, they say, was an anti-fascist, and so by the law of double negatives, it must be a fascist. And it's this kind of, I don't know, idiotic Manichean kind of thinking that
Manichean, like he does this, like this shit, like nobody in their audience knows what Manichean is. I don't know what Manichean is. I don't think you know what Manichean is. I bet there's probably 0 people in our chat who knows what it is. But he does that to like signal to the people in the audience that he knows shit, that he's like an intellectual. Do you know what I'm saying?
This is what they all do, though. They always, like him and Jordan Peterson in particular, like they try to confuse their audience so that they sound more intelligent.
Right.
Entire movement. And so there's the part of me that's, human and, gets pissed off, that seriously hopes that the communists get their revolution, that Klaus Schwab or whoever else gets what they want.
Yes, Klaus Schwab, the head of the World Economic Forum, well-known communist. Get the fuck out of here. Oh my God. He just said that Klaus Schwab is trying to do a communism. Oh my God. Oh no. But it's always a stand-in for like globalism, and globalism is always a stand-in for like anti-Semitic tropes. It's like generally what this when you start digging away at the layers of things, you end up at like it's the same old anti-Semitic tropes. I don't think Klaus Schwab actually happens to be Jewish, but that doesn't mean that like people aren't using anti-Semitic tropes to talk about him in the World Economic Forum. You know what I'm saying?
Every one of these motherfuckers goes to prison or gets killed because they were on the wrong side of history, thinking they're on the right side of history. And I would love to be able to watch it because they put those people down before they put down the resistance, as it turns out. But then there's a part of me that's human in another way.
You would love to be able to watch a bunch of people getting killed.
They, don't end up in that fate, and that we can turn this thing around before it gets to that point, because it's horrific and nobody deserves that, even these poor, deluded political prostitutes.
What do you think of the, this is the argument that Antifa and their allies and supporters and fellow travelers say. They say that they have to exist, their militancy needs to exist because the threat of far-right, racist, nationalist, Christo-fascist ideology is everywhere, overwhelming, targets people of color and minorities, and that they need to exist to operate as protectors of these communities, because the state being systematically racist and homophobic and, you know, all these other phobias that they list out, that they therefore must organize and do their direct action, which their MO primarily, when it's on the street, is to directly assault and fight and or kill if need their political opponents. And then the whole online world, it's the doxing and...
Just real quick, he mentioned killing. If you get a chance, everybody, if you're listening on the pod or you're watching the show, look up Andy No Cider Riot. He was there when they fucking killed somebody. Not Antifa either. Talking about the Proud Boys. Look up Andy No Cider Riot. I don't have time to get into it right now, but it's like really interesting that he like brings it up in this way.
Yeah, I was like on board halfway through that, and then all of a sudden he's like, and like they're gonna kill their political opponents, and it's like, no, that's the opposite of what they want to do.
Working with like larger institutions, SPLC, etc. Working
Yes, the Southern Poverty Law Center. Oh my God.
Reputation smearing a target. So that's a long question.
Yeah. No, it's fine. First, I'll actually point out that their primary tactic is what's called mid-level violence. It's a form of political violence where you are engaging in a type of provocation that's just like a toe over the line or a foot over the line without going all the way over the line. And they do that specifically because they either want you to back down, in which case they win, or they want you to react, in which case they will film you and make it look like you overreacted so they can create the smear campaign to destroy you and force you to back down or force you to be silenced.
He's describing like what people on the right do every day.
He's describing the act of provocation just more broadly. Big Brother does.
I'm not saying people on the left.
A big brother will do it to a little brother. One cat will do it to another cat. Right? He's just describing the act of provocation.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to say that people on the left don't do that. I'm just saying people on the right do that every day. So like, why is he saying, and this is the left's tactic or Antifa's tactic?
It's
like,
it's people do it in apolitical scenarios all the time.
Yeah,
like Scientologists, they have a thing they do called bull baiting. Like where they'll just like kind of harass somebody until that person smacks the camera out of the camera person's, you know, they like all kinds of people do this. It's just called provoking someone else. We have a word for it. You don't need to get all complicated about it.
Yeah. And I'm also not saying that it's good or justified.
Manipulation.
I'm just saying he's describing it as if it's
actually well documented. We're just politically, in terms of
this thing that only occurs on the left.
fairly ignorant, but Antifa's not. Now, as for their claim that they need to exist, I'll give them some credit. In the 1940s and 50s, when they were coming together, or 30s, there was some truth to that. But this is not true any longer, so it's just a BS pretext so that they can keep living out Herbert Marcuse's wet dream of refusing the entire society and pretending that we live in a state that
does he not think that there's a fascist rise?
I don't
Like
know what he thinks.
globally?
I only know what he's saying, HK. And what he's saying here is he's describing provocation and acting like, I guess, Herbert Marcuse fucking invented it or something. Like, I don't know. Like, he's using this. You remember when everybody was freaking out about Saul Alinsky, and then none of them knew who Saul Alinsky was? Saul Alinsky wrote Rules for Radicals. Like, this is the same thing. Like, this is just what people do to people that they don't like. People just provoke people they don't like. People fuck with people they don't like. Somebody's provoking somebody at a fucking bar right now.
Where the right wing, the Christo-fascists, and all of these people are actually recruiting and actively growing, and that these communities actually needed protection. I'm sorry, guys, that died. That's not real. That stopped being real in Western nations a long time ago. I'm not saying that there's no right-wing fanatics. I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying that actually there's no need to protect from them through street militancy any longer. That's a fantasy that's dead at least 40 years. And you can say whatever you want.
I would disagree about that. Just look at all of the fucking armed right-wingers who come and protest like libraries when there's a drag queen story hour.
Yeah, and not for nothing, I forget the name of this guy's pal. He's pals with this Christian nationalist guy. We watched a couple videos of it. Do you remember this video where they were kind of sitting outside, kind of near a large body of water, and he was talking to some older guy? You were probably on the show. I forget the name of the fucking organization. It's like on the tip of my tongue, but he gets funding from this. I forget the guy's name now. And he's talking about Christo-fascism. The guy that he's getting a lot of his funding from is a Christo-fascist. I just can't remember the name of the guy or the organization right now. Maybe somebody in chat knows.
Okay, so he's probably purposefully trying to play it down.
Probably. I mean, I think he might be a true believer. I don't know. I can't read his mind. I just know he keeps fucking stepping in it all the time, you know?
Person shaking a little bit loose from Antifa and that mentality, what I would tell them is
Sovereign Nations is the name of the group, which doesn't sound fascist at all.
Are the primary cause of the thing that you claim to be fighting. So you're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're pissing people off to the point where they react against you and they become reactionaries because you're using these mid-level violence provocations that piss people off and don't give them due pathways to recourse. So they're left with, well, if you're going to make me look bad, I'm going to deserve to look bad. And then you have entities like the Proud Boys showing up and being total dickheads. So they are creating the thing that they use to justify their own existence, which in other words is snake oil. The best case that they can make for themselves is a snake oil argument that...
Okay, so snake oil, he doesn't know what the fuck snake oil is historically either, right? Snake oil, yeah. It's legitimately, for a while, it might have just been, they just might have been using oil derived from a snake saying it was a cure-all. But snake oil is generally either, like, it may not necessarily be used for some kind of medical cure-all, but that's where it comes from. So what he's talking about is he has no idea what the fuck snake oil is, like how it's used.
Yeah, so he's saying that like it causes the thing that it's supposed to cure, but like first of all, snake oil doesn't cause anything usually, and second of all, it's meant to cure everything. Right.
It's a you know, like homeopathy is, we could call that snake oil. It's a broad term that we generally use for medical treatments that have no evidence for their efficacy, right? That's what Dr. Oz got rich on.
Yep.
And it has nothing to do with what he's talking about. This guy doesn't know anything. Like every time he refers to something like just something cultural that's fairly modern, it's just nonsensical. So then why am I supposed to trust him like about what some old dead philosopher believed if he can't even tell me what the fuck snake oil is? Like, I mean, everybody, like, even if they can't give you a definition, they can give you some sort of like, okay, this is kind of what snake oil means, right? Not everybody, but the vast majority of people know what the fuck. If you say, oh, that doesn't work, it's snake oil, they know what you mean. But he thinks it's like a snake oil is like some kind of like self-perpetuating cultural phenomena. And that's just like way off from what we mean when we say snake oil.
Yeah, he thinks that like snake oil is going to cause a problem and then cure it.
Now, the snake oil salesman may tell you have a problem you don't have.
Yeah.
But I mean, now I'm just trying to be charitable. Fuck that.
Because what was historically no longer is, and their idea that systems and structures are infinitely self-perpetuating, which is a Marxist belief about how the bourgeoisie rig society and dictate ideologies to keep themselves in power and to exclude certain other voices, is actually just a projection.
Wait, does he disagree with that?
Again, why, as political prostitutes, they should really think twice about what they're supporting, because they're not useful to a regime except to destabilizing the existing thing. Destabilizers are not useful to a regime that wants to be sustainable, and so they're going to be done away with or locked up.
Hold on. So these actions we saw with Antifa and the Proud Boys, it was literally like the Proud Boys would bust in a bunch of people. Usually we saw it in Portland. They'd bust in a bunch of people. A bunch of people in Portland were like, oh, nope. No, don't come here and harass my community. And they'd go out there and they were willing to fight. And that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you ever, ain't no Proud Boys in Portland today, ain't no Antifa out on the fucking street. That's it. Generally, generally community defense. Do some of the people in these things do shit that's probably bad? Sure, whatever. But people do bad shit all the time. Like we can't really hold that standard up for any group, right? That, oh, all the people in here have to be pure. Like you can't do that with any group. So it's like, this guy's just got it all wrong, but maybe it's because I don't understand his new definition of snake oil. And if I understood the new definition of snake oil, I would be able to understand what the fuck he's talking about better. I don't know.
I would say like Antifa doesn't mean anything if there's no fa to be anti against.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, there's just such a history of this, like in the 80s, a version of Antifa they were called sharps. They were skinheads against racial prejudice, and they had to run all the Nazi punks out of the venues. Because you know about the Nazi bar, right? You let one Nazi in, then all your other patrons leave, and now your bar's full of Nazis. Well, they didn't want that happening at the punk venues. And then eventually, like, they believed that they had to whoop that ass to cause that to happen. And that's what they did. And, you know, now there's no more sharps because there's the Proud Boys know to stay the fuck away from a punk show, you know,
or house arrested or put on the most strict forms of social credit limiting that anybody in this society is going to have. And they can whine and cry and piss and moan and try to mid-level violence a regime, a real regime, not a free country that allows them to get away with mid-level violence, and see what happens to them. They wouldn't get away with this shit in China, I'll tell you that right now. The Chinese government, if somebody tried to do what Antifa does in China, would smash their asses so hard, they'd all be in standing room only prisons under Tiananmen Square until they die. That only works in free countries. It only works.
Wait, what would the Chinese government do to a group like the Proud Boys? They'd smash that shit down too, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the place where exactly that is not what they say. So they're selling snake oil. They've deluded themselves, and they're selling
that's
snake
homeopathy
oil to justify being little assholes. That's my opinion of them.
Shifting gears a bit. So just in my 13 minutes speaking with you, and I knew this beforehand, you are very calm and of course well informed.
He seems calm Well informed, I don't know. He gave us a really incorrect definition of a very common term, but whatever.
Great speaker.
Great speaker. Oh no, y'all are both the black hole of charisma.
On your social media, on Twitter, I would get this perception that you've been permanently suspended for repeated hate speech. I want to give you the opportunity to sort of, going back to that okay groomer question at the beginning, why in your mind was that a good response to describe the people leading a lot of this brainwashing, and why you...
What kind of brainwashing, Andy? You mean that makes people gay, Andy?
When Twitter was being placed under pressure to censor people for using that word, that you, in my understanding, continue with anyways, and paid a pretty heavy price. You've lost access to a big platform. You worked really hard to build up a large audience on there. Obviously, you have other things you're doing as well, but to lose access to that large audience is a big deal, I think.
Yeah, well, so there are two primary reasons why OK Groomer was fantastic. One of those is rhetorical, and one of those is descriptive. The descriptive reason is very simple. They are groomers.
Who?
They are groomers into an ideology. They are cult groomers. That cult grooming is into topics of sex and sexuality and gender in ways that actually require introducing things like sexual conversations, sexuality conversations, gender conversations, sexual topics, sometimes the viewing of pornography, sometimes questionable materials like the book Genderqueer that have graphic drawings. They're cartoons, but they're still graphic drawings of one teenager performing oral sex on another. Technically not, because it's on a strapped-on sex toy, but whatever you want to make of that.
This
What
book
the hell is
sounds
he
based.
talking about?
This book sounds based. Like, yeah, I don't know. I haven't read this book, but like, we're just going to let it. I'm going to save my kind of thoughts on his suspension and his little martyr act until he's got done maybe incorrectly describing what he was doing. Maybe.
It's a very graphic book. And so this idea of these things happening, and then, well, we're going to use this as a vehicle to initiate and then promote social transition that we're then going to hide from your parents, and this positioning of the facilitators in the school, whatever they are, teachers, administrators, nurses, social workers, whatever their role, their specific job, they're facilitators. The facilitators of this process, not only advocating hiding this from the parents, but then also pushing it along further and further.
Wait, someone...
actively...
The only time I've ever heard anyone advocating hiding something from the parents is when a kid says like, hey, I'm gay, and my parents are like extremely anti-gay. Should I come out to them? Like, the usual answer is no. Wait until you are moved out, are financially independent from them, and then if you want to, you can tell them. But I wouldn't tell them before that, or you could end up in a bad situation.
Right. And I don't know what each individual educator does, but what you're saying sounds like a pretty reasonable response. And even if there's no policy on it, just like a decent person would probably have that response. But he's claiming that the administration or whatever is trying to like push this on people. And I feel like that's just like a lot of extra work that teachers don't have time for. Like, even just like as a practical matter, you know?
Like, no one's saying, don't tell your parents, gender isn't binary.
Right.
Positioning themselves as the equal and the friend and helper of the students, while they're positioning the parents, for example, as a potential danger. If you have to hide something from your parents, maybe they won't understand you. We have to protect you from them. We have to protect you from your parents. There's no better word for that than grooming. So on a technical...
No, grooming literally means something very specific, at least in the context he's using it. It doesn't mean, oh, you told me this, I don't think you should tell this other person this.
There's actually a much better word for that than grooming. Education.
Assisted self-preservation.
best word to describe what's actually going on. Now, in a rhetorical sense, and it's not the word groomer, it's the phrase "okay, groomer," is rhetorically awesome. First of all, it's just dismissive. That you can say it back to anything, and therefore it has like infinite power. We learned that with "okay, boomer." Once you introduce, which is the other reason it's rhetorically awesome. I just stole one of their things and reappropriated it back against them, which is awesome. You remember we have that chirpy pretty girl dancing around. "Okay, boomer."
One of their things.
No matter what the boomer says.
Who is
Anybody classified
they?
as a boomer. You don't have to answer their argument. You don't have to engage.
Like young
with
people?
"Okay, boomer," and it's over. There's nothing they can say. It's very dismissive.
Like
it's very
his age range is
very powerful.
the age range that would say "okay, boomer."
Right. He's I think he's around my age, right? 40,
Yeah.
early 40s, mid 40s.
Like he's not a boomer. He's younger than a boomer. That's the age range that would say "okay, boomer."
Right. His parents are probably boomers.
Does he think that it's political?
Right. Because sometimes it was political, but it was more about being out of touch.
Yeah.
And I mean, as you get older, sometimes, I mean, there's things like sometimes I'm out of touch, right? Like some 20-year-old fucking wants to start talking to me. I'm probably going to be out of touch about this, that, or the other thing. I might listen to him though. You never know. They might know some shit I don't know, you know?
Powerful rhetorically in that regard. And "okay, groomer" does the same thing, as if we all should have permission not to listen to somebody who's a groomer about their tortured arguments for why they should be allowed to continue grooming children.
Wait, what?
And I will say that I don't believe the majority of these people are pedophiles, but if we were to...
But no, that's the implication, and that's why you got kicked off of Twitter, you dumb fuck.
Yeah. It's not just the implication. Like that is what he means.
I don't know what he means, but that's the implication. That's how it's heard by the vast majority of people when someone calls you a groomer, unless you're like literally like work at Petco. And then you right? But that's different.
left's logic about systems and structures, we would say that they're supporting structural pedophilia, because
Wait, what?
pedophilia is occurring. There are children that are being victimized. They
Wait, now
are
do the
being
Catholic
victimized
Church.
by people who are taking them down this path, and thus the entire apparatus of supporting that would be under their own line of thought, structural pedophilia that they're engaging in. But we've seen what would happen, Andy, if you were, say, a structural racist. Well, they just drop it. You're a racist. You're supporting racism. So these people are just pedophiles, and they're just supporting pedophilia by their logic, which of course...
So does he think that all Christians are just pedophiles then? Because a lot of Christian churches are structurally pedophilia. What did he say?
Like I think a better way to say it is like, does he think everyone who's a Catholic is complicit in what the Catholic Church has done?
Yeah.
And the answer to that is clearly no. Not even most churches didn't do that.
Yeah.
Most pastors, most priests didn't do that. This is dumb. This is I'm gonna wait till he's done here, because I have like kind of a broader point and like a point about him and what I believe to be like his own narcissistic behavior and how that like plays into that. But I'm gonna wait a second here.
We're going to have a double standard where they get to play that game. This OK Groomer thing hits right back into that the other direction. And obviously it proved that they couldn't get the stink hit them, and they could not get the stink off of them. It's like they got sprayed by a skunk and they just could not wash it off. The groomer thing has stuck. They can't get away from the groomer thing. Their attempt to block people like me and now Colin Wright and other people for kind of challenging some of this stuff. Libs of TikTok is under kind of constant threat for this, has been banned permanently from Facebook. Gays Against Groomers got banned permanently for being anti-LGBT. They're literally a 100% gay organization, and they're apparently homophobic now because...
How do you know that?
...saying groomer.
They're just a
all
Twitter
it's doing
account.
is revealing to more and more and more people that there's something to this. I can't tell you. I got probably 1,000 emails.
The thing to it is called slander.
Well, I mean, slander is a legal term, and in the United States, slander and defamation are pretty hard to prove. But like, he was like, "Oh, this Twitter account was 100% gay organization." How the fuck do you know that? It's just a Twitter account. For all we know, it was James Lindsay. Right? Like, such a crazy thing to say.
or whatever after I got kicked off of Twitter, and this is just 2 weeks ago, I probably got 1,000 messages of people saying, I thought you were going too far with the groomer thing, and now I believe it completely. Now I believe that that's exactly what they're doing, and they're trying to
Who's they?
They don't want people to see it. And I think it therefore is a...
So,
virtually
in other
perfect
words,
form.
he
Now,
convinced thousands of people to hate their own countrymen for a completely made up reason.
Yes. Yes, that's been his project for a while.
technically, I will point out, on a very technical level, I did not get kicked off of Twitter for OK Groomer. I got suspended for 12 hours from Twitter, or locked out for 12 hours for OK Groomer, after which I deleted all of my OK Groomer tweets. Every tweet where I called somebody a groomer, I went and deleted them all proactively because I knew they were going to try to target my account with it. And so I deleted them all. What I actually got kicked out of Twitter permanently for was OK Child Sexualization Specialist, which I thought was a clever way to reword the similar idea. But
No, that's worse. Because you said that to like a specific fucking person, and then all of your fucking followers started harassing that person. Oh my, like, what the fuck?
I'm unfamiliar with this story.
It's fine. What he said is accurate. I mean, he called, I forget who it was. It was just, I think it might have just been some random person too, who like didn't agree with him. It wasn't like he was going after somebody who had a big following like him. And then like that person was then subject to harassment. Like, and what happens is once the stuff leaves Twitter and people start harassing folks, like calling them, writing them letters, calling their employer because of like these harassment campaigns, then Twitter will take whoever the leader is off. I don't know for a fact that happened here, but I'm guessing that happened here.
Use the G word. And so I actually believe I got kicked out of Twitter permanently for beating a leftist at a word game, which they don't tolerate very well.
So everything that you're saying, I mean, what?
Okay, I'm going to give my thoughts here now. This is the best thing. He thinks it's the best thing that ever happened to him getting kicked off Twitter. And I think this is going to be as good a place as any to like end the podcast part of the show, because we're an hour 20 in or so. He thinks this is the best thing that ever happened to him. He gets to go on this like little woe is me tour. And he couldn't stop. He knew that if he did not stop what he was doing, and by what he was doing, I mean targeting harassment at individuals who just happened to be queer because they were queer, which is what he was doing. It wasn't even people like me who are like loudmouths and have a show. Like, it's all in the game, baby. You know what I'm saying? If somebody starts saying that shit to me, I'm on here every night talking, right? I have some like recourse. I have some like group of people that will come to my aid. Some group of people on the internet who will go hard in the paint for me. You know what I'm saying? He was doing this to people who don't even have 50 people watching a Twitch channel. And I'm telling you what probably happened is one of those people's fucking family member or good friend of theirs was some kind of powerful person, some kind of influential person. Maybe it was like a senator's fucking nephew or niece. Do you know what I'm saying? Because you do that to enough people, just because that person ain't got no power doesn't mean they don't have access to the levers of power through someone else. And I'm almost sure that that's what happened. You know how like Jordy Pete was talking all kind of shit about people getting mutilated by their doctor, and then he said it about Elliot Page, and then whoop, and he had to pull down the tweet. I'm guessing like that happened to him, but like a degree of separation away. Like he didn't know that the person he was doing that to, you know, mom is the CTO of, you know, fucking Oracle or just something like that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm guessing that's probably how this happened, but he knew what he was doing, and he knew that his followers were going to harass individuals, and that harassment would leave Twitter, and Twitter will take almost no action until that harassment starts leaving Twitter. And if that harassment is homophobic, racist, or in this case, probably transphobic, all, like, if I was going to guess, then they will act because it looks bad on them, because things have like escaped they've escaped the metaverse. I don't know. They've escaped the screen essentially and started causing real world problems. And that can cause real world problems for the corporation we call Twitter. And I think he knew what he was doing. And I think he is going to try to ride this for like fame. I think he miscalculated though, because he has no charisma. It's hard to run this grift without charisma. And I think he severely lacks it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right.
And like, not for nothing, like just yesterday, a fucking children's hospital had to shut down because somebody who believes some of the things that not James Lindsay, but libs of TikTok and Matt Walsh were saying about Boston Children's Hospital, they were calling gender affirming care. They were calling it mutilation. Someone who believed that called it a bomb threat, and they locked down the hospital. And so I think we're going to see a lot of these accounts get nuked, because
I hope so.
I do too, because that's a children's hospital, for fuck's sake. I mean, like, what kind of like monster audience, monster community are you going to create that will cause a children's hospital to go on lockdown, right? That's just fucking terrorism. Like, just straight up terrorism. And not for nothing, like, a lot of times, and I think that a lot of right wingers have done a really good job of playing the ref. Like, if you're not going to win the argument, you might as well just try to win the ref, right? Get the ref to like agree that you're being treated unfairly. So they've been trying to play the ref this whole time, and the ref is Twitter, the ref is Facebook, the ref is Instagram. They ain't done a good job of playing the ref over at TikTok. TikTok will just kick you the fuck off. Same with Twitch. Twitch will just kick you the fuck off. They won't even tell you why on Twitch. And generally, it's like you don't get kicked off of here for nothing. So, but I think at this point, their ability to play the ref when Twitter is going to be like, boy, it would suck if people thought I was in favor of a children's hospital or biased in the direction of a children's hospital. Well, no, actually, that doesn't work anymore. It's okay to be biased in favor of the fucking children's hospital. There's like such a small segment of society that would think it would be bad for you to be biased in favor of the children's hospital, that I think that this one went out too far. And I think that we're going to see maybe not Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire, just because the Daily Wire is a fairly popular publication, but that libs of TikTok account's going to be gone. And a lot of the like middle, like level people that have been doing this, I don't know their names even, but a lot of people, maybe they have 80,000, 100,000 followers or whatever that are doing this. I think a lot of those people, you're going to start seeing them getting kicked off, because Twitter wants to be able to tell their shareholders and their advertisers that actually know, after that children's hospital incident, we put the kibosh on this. That was a bridge too far. We can't have that happening.
I hope so. I'm not as optimistic as you are about Twitter. I think Twitter will do as little as possible, as late as possible.
Oh, I think this is as little as possible, as late as possible. There was a terrorist threat made at a children's hospital, HK. I mean, this is like this isn't one of those, well, I don't know. There's two sides to this one. There's like, even like right-wing people probably would generally be like, well, let's go ahead and not do the children's hospital thing.
Yeah, but I've been surprised before about what Twitter is okay with, and I will probably be surprised again. So I'm hopeful, but I don't expect much. You know?
Yeah. Tonight I'm going to read the show out. We usually end with boomers, but I'm going to end with a song called Then Gwen. When I was young in Newark, California, a trans woman named Gwen Arujo was murdered at a party. This is an NVS song about that. I don't want to get into the details of it. Don't feel like crying on stream. It happened 15 miles from where I lived, and it was disgusting. This song by NVS is about that. And shout out to Walter and Kyle and River and Micah and everybody over at the band NVS. And we'll be back for Red Light in just a minute. Thanks for listening to the Intellectual Dollar Tree.
Beauty in you, it truly terrifies me to know I might be one of them. Lots of cases you hear, it isn't natural. Stand a gay or lesbian. Searching through Craigslist endlessly, a picture is a whore. Preference or fetish is to decide. That can see things equally, the less a man than I am, the less a woman in your eyes. Question this gender system, a prison of the heart and mind. Maybe it's not so simple to naturalize a label, a shade of gray is undefined. Searching through San Francisco, I left my heart at divas. Your trunk defeats my king of clubs. If they could see you as more than sexualized or sorted, a human capable of love. Appearance not a pretense. Genitals do not define you.